What's poppin', players? Welcome back to a TwoPennyGames review. This time, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I am your host and lead reviewer, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor, Elliott.
Are you ready to talk about one of the best games of 2024?
I think I am, Connor. I think I am indeed. Fantastically. Connor, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is here. We've been playing it. I have rolled credits after 60 hours. What is your hour count looking like right now?
About 43.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're far away from the ending at this rate. You're taking it a lot slower. You're enjoying your time. The everlasting gobstopper that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I wanted to get to the review and make sure I had a complete picture of what's going on here. So I have beaten Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And it's an interesting thing, my relationship with Final Fantasy VII now, because Final Fantasy VII Remake back in 2020 was my first Final Fantasy VII experience. And then since then, I've played the original game 3 times, thanks to you. Final Fantasy VII OG review is up on the channel right now, youtube.com/@TwoPennyGames. Make sure you subscribe and like that. We reviewed it for the 2 Penny Game Club. We had a lot of great things to say. We criticized it where necessary. Most of the things we criticized are because of its age. But, some other things that we were like, this part's kind of, whatever. But overall, we were very positive of it. It's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. And Remake, the first part of this 3-part series, was also a great game that I love very, very much. I believe was it your game of the year that year or no?
It was.
It was?
Yes.
So yeah, it was a fantastic time. And ladies and gentlemen, Rebirth is no different. And that's because Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is an amazing game. I love this game. This game is phenomenal. This is one of my favorite video games of all time. But man, is it far from a perfect video game. This game's got some issues. This game's got some problems. I want to start with the positive, though. The best parts about this game is the characters, their interactions, how they talk to each other, how they interact with each other, their bond and how it grows and supersedes. There are moments in this game that I never thought I would have with the characters from the original game that I'm getting here, and I can't believe they're here. So many high highs, so many low lows in terms of emotional roller coasters, and I really cannot stress enough that these characters are possibly the best cast of characters in all of gaming history, period. Rivaled only by Mass Effect, I would say. I struggle to think of another cast of characters that could even be in the conversation of being better than this. The combat has been expanded upon from Final Fantasy VII Remake in a lot of really smart ways. This has become easily one of my top probably 3 favorite combat systems of all time. It's dynamic, it is deep, it is dense, or it is simple. Whatever you want to make of this combat system, you can get out of it with this game. Of course, the deeper you get into it and the more involved you get, the more rewarding it is. But if you just want to mash a square button and then throw a random ability out every once in a while, that works too. I really do think this combat system is some of the most fun you can have in an action RPG ever. And once again, every RPG developer should take notes. This should be the combat system you look at when you're trying to think of how do I make an action RPG. This is how you do it. And the music, phenomenal. Oh, God, it's so good. So many different iterations of classic songs, so many new songs, and so many smart uses and implementation of the music, and it really is just phenomenal. And I also think the side quests are pretty good here. Are they world-class? No. But they're pretty good for the most part. This is the green icons side quests is what I mean specifically. And minigames on top of minigames on top of minigames. This experience cannot get old because there's just so many different things that you can do. Not all of them are great. Some of them pretty lame. But you have absolute bangers like Queen's Blood, like Chocobo Racing, and a couple of others that really I could sink dozens of hours in. Queen's Blood is now my new favorite video game card game. It has surpassed Gwent in my eyes. It is just a load of fun, and I want it to be its own spin-off thing, like a PvP type thing where we can build decks and play against each other in that ways. Because it's just a blast. I love it so much. Now, to talk about some of the negative things, because I really want to pressure this. This game is legit one of my favorite video games ever. I adore it. But it's got a couple of issues. Mainly, I've got three main issues with this game. The first is its attempt at open world design is so copy-paste, boring, Ubisoft checklist styling that it makes Ubisoft games look interesting. The open world elements of this game, I really do think, fail to justify their existence. They are run over there, fight a thing, climb a tower, scan the world, scan this thing. Like, it is the most droll, boring, uninteresting activities that you could do in an open world setting. The next is the bloat from Remake is still felt here. Especially in the later chapters of the game, there are multiple segments where I sit there and go, this isn't fun. I don't want to do this. Can we get past this? And it's sprinkled all throughout, but it really starts hitting in those later double-digit chapter numbers where I go, wow, this is a lot. I would rather us be past this part. And third, and probably my biggest critique, is this ending sucks. It's not good. Now, granted, the journey was so good that it doesn't matter that the last hour or two was so disappointing. It's not that I don't get it. I get it. It's just I don't agree with the direction we're going. And it left me feeling frustrated, confused, and overall, I kept asking myself, what was the point of choices that we made in Remake and choices we made throughout Rebirth? What was the point if it all accumulated to this? And I can't really get any deeper into that without spoilers. Connor, when you finish the game, I do want to do a spoiler cast of some kind.
We have
about it. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really think it's just a baffling ending that honestly is quite cowardice. I think Square Enix is wanting to have their cake and eat it too, and I would have rathered different choices. Or, in fact, to be more specific, I would have rathered them to have made a choice. And so, yeah, I was very, very disappointed in the ending. But that's 2 hours out of a 60-plus hour game. I could have gone to 70. I could have broken 100 hours in this game if I didn't want to rush and see the ending. And Connor, that's when I want to take it to you, my friend, because you are taking your time with this game. And I want to know what your experience is so far.
Well, I'll touch on some of the points you did. Mm-hmm. The combat's amazing. It is one of the best action combat systems that any game has ever produced. There's a reason why they built themselves off of Remake, because they already had struck gold with the combat system. After playing Final Fantasy 16 last year, a game that I enjoyed primarily because of the narrative reasons, because the gameplay with the more DMC...
God, this game shits on Final Fantasy 16 combat.
Unfortunately, it does. Because DMC was clearly an inspiration for Final Fantasy 16. And unfortunately, they also made it too easy at the same time, so it leads to a very blasé combat system, given the length of the game, which is, I don't even remember what my hours were, 60 or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. But, tons of minigames. I mean, they really give you just like minigame after minigame after minigame, and they're all unique, and I've had fun with pretty much all of them. The characters, I love how they just talk, That was what, playing through it again, the original Final Fantasy VII was lacking. You would just get a lot more surface level material from the characters due to the fact that you're kind of going large periods of time where you're just walking to an objective overland, fighting enemies and whatnot, and there wasn't the technology to allow for your characters to just talk while you're walking. This one rectifies that with making me actually chuckle and laugh and really enjoy myself with the conversations these characters that I already loved are having to make them even better. You had mentioned it while we were doing while we were playing it. Tifa and Aerith, originally, they had a relationship that was kind of, we're both going for the same man, and so there's some friction there. This one, that friction is there, but in a more realistic way that doesn't get in the way of their friendship, which is just charming to watch.
They are friends first.
Yes.
I kept, throughout my entire experience, I kept going, look at these women supporting women, man. They're the best. They're like just two little besties, you know? And it like, yes, the love triangle stuff is still kind of there, you know? And there are moments where one character is like, oh yeah, you know, I was with Cloud last night, and the other one will go, huh? And that's it. But that's all that'll happen, because they go, well, why were you like in their head? But it's not worth talking about. You feel like if a relationship were to form between Cloud and one of them, the other one would be like, okay, cool, happy for you guys. You know, like it wouldn't be like, ugh, why her? Like type shit. Like there's no cattiness there, and there's cattiness in the original game.
There is, and they eradicated it here for the better. Kate Sith, you know,
Sucks.
He's not to play. He's not good, as I kind of found out recently. It struck me when I was fighting against these sandworms, and they like take away your party members, and all I had was Kate Sith, and I found myself just not being able to do almost anything with him. Just with his basic attacks, really can't get up his ATB meter to do the cooler abilities that characters have access to.
I want to add on to that, and in talking about combat, it is unbelievable how there are this many playable characters and they all feel like they should have their own video game.
Yeah.
Like they are just fully formed animations, combat stylings. They all play differently, and they all, for the most part, play well, with the exception, I agree with you, Kate Sith is not fun to play as.
But if you don't like him, just play the other party members. And I did that so far, without having beaten the game, his personality interjects a certain level of fun that was missing from some of the base cast members. Not in a way that vastly improves the game, but I found myself not being annoyed at him every single time he spoke or had an interaction with somebody, which, as someone who's always hated Kate Sith since the original game, I was happy to not be so disappointed with him in that regard. Though he's still, even then, the weakest character. You know, Red 13... You know, they do so many cool things with him.
So great.
And I haven't even gotten to his part of the story.
Oh,
Each
man.
character kind of has their own like main plot line from what I've understood. Barrett as well. We'll talk more about that in our spoiler cast when we eventually do that. But suffice it to say, they overall do very well in that regard.
Everybody gets a moment.
Everyone does. Yeah. The narrative's been great so far, but of course, I haven't beaten it. And I have heard... Nomura said people weren't going to like the ending of this one, and it seems that's rung true so far.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Which I don't mind, because, I mean, I like it when artistic directors of some sort, of any kind, have a certain vision with their game, and they do it regardless of how the masses like us are going to perceive it and receive it. You know, for the better or worse. I just like the concept of that.
I have a response to that. I like that too.
But
I don't think that's what's happening here. And I just can't go any deeper without spoiling. And I don't want to spoil it for you, because I don't want your idea of it to be tainted by my perception of the ending.
Yeah.
And I would like you to like have your own thoughts on it. But yeah, I don't like it. I don't agree with the choices. It doesn't make me any less excited for the third game. I'm still excited for the third game. I'm excited for the character moments. I'm excited for the combat to grow. I'm excited for an evolution of the open world mechanics that we see in this game. But it resets my expectations for what the third game will be narratively wise.
Yeah.
And so... yeah, so it's complicated, and we'll get into that into a spoiler cast within hopefully the next couple of weeks. We'll see. We're very busy over here. You know, as soon as we can, we'll get into that. But yeah, ending aside, I mean, bro, I'll round up and say my experience was 70 hours. 70 hours, 68 of them were phenomenal. You know, that's what am I gonna say? Like, you know, but yeah, my only real thing is just like the areas where there's that bloat, which like isn't necessarily bad content. except for a couple of moments which have been pointed out online of like, why am I throwing these boxes just to flip switches? You'll know the part when you get there. Moments like that. And the open world design, I think, is just severely lacking. I think it's pretty boring.
And to that point, as someone who has experienced a lot of the open world,
you've done a lot more of the open world stuff than I have.
There are core things that you do in terms of side content, and open world stuff, and it's the same every single region you go to, which can be, first of all, annoying. Because it's just like that checklist you were talking about. It's so much of a checklist that each time you complete an objective in the open world, there's a series of dots denoting each thing that you can do in that open world. The dots
were driving me crazy, man. It was such like Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 synchronization like level type stuff. I was like, holy shit, we're doing this?
Literally a checklist, in real time in the game. That being said, there is a lot of value even in this less than realized open world. First being, there's what the fuck's it called? It's something involving like a thing called a proto-relic. It has a certain mission name type that are in each region that have their own storyline that they start setting up and their own minigame that's attached to it. I actually missed the entire minigame or the entire side quest in the first area, but I did the second and third one. The second one, you do Fort Condor battle, which is like a strategic game.
I missed Fort Condor.
Yeah.
I played it in the Intergrade DLC or Intermission DLC. And I enjoyed it pretty well there. So like, I was disappointed to get to the end of my experience and go, that was great. Oh wait, where is that?
Yeah, and it's very nice and fun, and it leads to that the little interesting story that it's creating. But then the third area, you have to basically go track down Cactuar Rock and unlock an area to do a mini game where you have to defeat as many as possible. And it has its own little rules that are associated with it.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see how else they not only develop that storyline, but what new minigames they throw at you. Because they went above and beyond, instead of just doing the same exact minigame, changed it up in each region. You also have your excavation sites, where you can use your chocobo to dig things up, which directly impact some of the more, extra side content you can do, such as
You're talking the crafting stuff?
Yeah, crafting special items that you sometimes can only get through the item crafting system that the game has in it.
Which is fine.
It's fine, yeah.
It's fine. It's functional. It works. It's fast.
It's the fact that it still rewards you for doing these little excavation things that, unfortunately, you have to find out about by going to these springs that are around the map that just require you to press some buttons, and there you go. You got it. And that's it.
Yeah.
Pretty uninspiring, but what it sometimes leads to is inspiring. The side quests. They're not that great itself, but
they're very fetch questy.
Very fetch questy.
Go over here, fight those enemies, go grab that item, bring it back, type things. But the conversations that happen along the way, to not get into too many spoilers, but to provide at least one example, there's one fairly early into the game where you're running up a mountain going off to fetch something. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But there's a conversation between Barrett and Cloud about Cloud's mom's response of when he left his small town to go join up and join the service and join Shinra. And that conversation is something I never expected these two characters to have. And they had it, and it was well written, well performed. It was charming, funny, a little sad at the same time. And that's where the game just shines, is how these characters interact with each other.
And it makes even a point to let you know when you start one of these side quests that it's going to be in connection with one of your party members. Mm-hmm. Generally, it'll be always Cloud talking to some guy, and Red 13 will be there. He'll be like, I'm interested in this quest. And that's who you not only have these interesting conversations with, like with Barrett, but you are impacting the relationship mechanic that is in the game. It was in the original one, but they've made it more forward, with you having icons above your party members in certain parts of the game and whenever you deepen your relationship with them.
Yeah. And
that has certain narrative implications as well. 2 times in the game that I'm aware of, maybe more, since I've not gone completely through.
Yeah. It basically functions a lot like almost like a Persona social link kind of mechanic, where you're forming bonds with your party members and so forth through Cloud, and these bonds can be increased either by doing side quests that involve them. There are moments in the game where they give you dialogue options, just cute little flavor text to kind of craft your experience the way you want to. Of course, Cloud is still Cloud, and Barrett is still Barrett. So, these conversations still have to play out a certain way, but it just gives you a little bit of agency in how that all works. And you can also increase it by doing synergy attacks. That is either like little quick combo things that you can do by pressing a hotkey or by building up your synergy bar. And this is the expansion on the combat system that I think has taken what was already a really awesome combat system and pushed it to the next level. Where you build up a synergy bar by doing your normal ATB attacks, which are just like your special attacks when you build up your bar. This game has done its best to just basically put turn-based combat into an action game. And I love it for that. Anyways, so when two characters build up their bar, usually after they do about 3, sometimes 4 ATB abilities of their own. This can be either casting a spell or using specific weapon abilities and so forth like that. Whether it's like Cloud's Braver or Triple Slash, or using Cure or using Fire or Fire Magic and stuff like that. All of that builds up the synergy. And when two characters both have enough synergy built up, they can do an actual synergy ability. This can vary from doing damage, doing elemental damage, or just doing a heavy combo damage, and it comes with a really cool animation every time that I never got tired of. And every time you do one of these abilities, it gives you a little bonus. This varies from, sometimes it's just giving you a third ATB bar so that your ATB builds up faster and you can have more attacks pop off all at once, which is great. Or it'll make it to where magic attacks don't cost any MP, or it'll unlock another limit break for each character to use. You might know, just because you're diving in more, characters only have one default limit break, right? Other than activating the synergy, you have not found any extra limit breaks, correct?
Besides the one that get upgraded through the synergy abilities, no, I have not found any.
Neither have I. But honestly, don't need it.
No.
Because there's already so many choices. I don't need more, you know? And so many different ways to build. And this system allows them to dive even deeper into boss fights. I'll say it plainly. When you're fighting things in the open world, the combat's not really engaging. It's pretty much just mash square until the enemy's dead, for the most part. With a couple of specific, certain enemy types that take a little bit more physical damage. Maybe you'll use a quick magic attack on them or something like that. But when you get into the boss fights, or even just really hard fights, like with, sometimes they'll rush you with a bunch of enemies, or sometimes it'll just be 2 or 3 tougher enemies that you have to think just a little bit on how to do it. But the boss fight specifically, you have to dive deep and go, okay, this is who is in my party right now. These are the possible combinations that I can use and abilities I can use in combination with the materia system, which we all know is awesome, and in how to develop a strategy in order to beat this boss. Some of these bosses are hard, really hard. Some of them will kick your ass so bad you go, oh, I need to go grind to go beat this boss. Especially early on, you'll fight multiple bosses that make you go, oh my god, I'm not ready for this, And they do that pretty much the entire experience, where there's just times where you go, I don't know if I can do this. And then it feels so good when you do it. And the numbers work out in your favor. This game, I could go all day talking about the combat. Going even deeper, it was a problem in Remake where you would enter a battle and you would face a new enemy type and they would be weak to a certain elemental that you didn't have equipped in your materia. So you'd have to lose, leave, come back, re-equip, and come back. Here they've kind of solved that through the folios, is that what they called? Upgrade tree, where you can, this is where you get your different synergy attack upgrades. This is where you get your stat boosts, more damage resistance, more attack damage, more elemental damage, stuff like that. But it's also where you can unlock specific moves for each individual character. Specifically, there's moves in there that allow you to do elemental damage for no MP cost. These moves aren't very damage heavy, but they do allow you to engage with the combat if your materia isn't up to snuff, or if you don't have the right materia equipped. So like you always have a wind damage ability, so you can always stagger enemies who are weak to wind damage, which like it's just smart, right? Like like instead of doing the crazy like 600, 700 damage that the materia would do, it does like 1 to 200 damage. But you get that stagger up still. So you when your back is against the wall, you always have options.
Mm-hmm. Very flashy game as well, in the best kind of way.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the synergy abilities, limit breaks, of course, the boss fights. They just really enjoy giving you a spectacle. And it always has that level of badassery that with these kinds of games, you kind of need. Because otherwise, it just feels very like, oh yeah, beat the new enemy and moving on to the next thing. But it really gives the fights a lot more weight to them.
Well, yeah, that and the enemy mechanics specifically are so diverse and dynamic that like you always when you engage with all of the mechanics, you feel impactful. That was my big criticism of Final Fantasy 16 is all damage felt exactly the same. Mm-hmm. It didn't seem like there was an optimal strategy to take enemies out other than mash square and do your icon abilities, which different icons would have different elemental things in them, but they wouldn't, those elemental differences wouldn't do anything. It was just color, you know, like as you were doing the flashy moves. So like it didn't feel like you had any difference. It just felt like I was doing damage sponge after damage sponge. Here, enemies can be damage spongy, but there are ways around it and moves you can do to be smart about it. And some of these enemies aren't like in Remake. For the most part, most enemies would be pressured or staggered through elemental damage, with a couple of exceptions, I think. Here, they get creative with it, where it's like, hey, this enemy is only pressured after you dodge this specific attack. Or this enemy is only pressured after using a combination of abilities. Or this enemy is only pressured after doing mass damage while it's charging up a kill ability or something like that. So like it puts the pressure on the player. It forces the player to always have the access. What is it called? Assess. Always have the assess materia. You have to have your assess materia equipped at all times. But like it forces the player to think. It forces the player to come up with a strategy. And when that strategy works, it's so satisfying to do every single time. And when you do stagger an opponent, it's just you just sit there and you go, all right, Pound Town, baby. Let's beat this motherfucker's ass.
It's especially nice when you're fighting a boss, particularly, who's just very hard to hit. Because the way that some of the, like you were mentioning, you need to use assess to find their specific weakness, not in terms of their element, but in terms of what tactic you need to employ to get up that pressure bar. It really makes those moments all the more satisfying when you eventually achieve it. And another cool thing that the open world also works hand in hand with it. It existed in 7 Remake, and I still love it here, which is that every single time you get a weapon, there's a specific point to it other than just increasing your damage of your magical damage or your physical damage or whatever. You eventually get to a point where each one has an ability that's tied to it. Now, that ability is only locked to that weapon unless you do certain parameters to get the proficiency of that skill up, and once you complete it, you have that regardless of what weapon you
pretty much just use the ability a lot.
Yeah. Most of the time, but sometimes it says something specific like use this ability and then use another ability after it. Because,
does it really?
Yeah. Like
that would explain why some of these abilities are really hard for me to get.
Yeah. Like Tifa's Star Shower. It says, I think when you do it,
she has that ability?
It's on one of the weapons.
Oh, I missed that weapon. I never got it. That was my favorite ability from the first game. I loved that. I was like, where is it? I can't find it.
I mean, I think I missed a lot of Barrett's weapons, which, once again, these are some of the perks of going through the open world. It actually has it gives you a reason to do it. Also, you have something like called a party level, which unlocks more of those folios you were talking about. Yeah. And
how do you feel about the folios versus like the weird galaxy things that they had in the first game?
I don't really even remember the galaxy things.
Yeah, so in the first game, it was tied to all of your upgrades were tied to your weapons.
Yeah,
and so you could, you would unlock new materia slots. You would be able to link materia slots. Mm-hmm. You could, increase. Yeah, it was a lot of stat. It was a lot of stat boosting differences and so forth. So like damage buffs and so forth like that. But it was all tied to the weapon you had equipped. So, like, when you finally upgraded every weapon, their stats would kind of be locked here. I think there's I don't particularly prefer one over the other. I think for the most part, it's just kind of different for the sake of being different. But allowing my character stats to be separated from the weapon and the weapon giving me different stats, I enjoy that more as an RPG player, being able to go a little deeper in that. You talk about how you get a new weapon and you learn the new weapon ability, but the way these games are crafted, the first game was like this as well. The way these games are crafted are so smart because every weapon is still viable. So you can pick and choose a favorite. I went back to the Buster Sword after being 5 or 6 swords deep and being like, all right, I think I have most of Cloud's weapons now, except for one that's probably going to be given to me near the end of the game. I'm going to look at the pros and cons of each weapon and go, okay, but what fits my play style? And the Buster Sword, which was the first sword they gave me, worked the best for me.
Same here.
And so I was like, oh, let me go back to the Buster Sword. And I played a majority of the game with the Buster Sword. And the fact that you could do that with each individual weapon and have your own personal attachment to it, whether it's like, hey, this sword does a lot of heavy physical damage, this sword does a lot of heavy magic damage, this sword has a lot of materia slots, this sword has less materia slots but does more in this way, is awesome. I love that. This is how you make an action RPG combat system.
It is.
This is the best way to do it. Everybody do this. Please. I would never get tired of this.
No,
Ever.
Especially with other games, which could change it up in any number of ways to fit that title. And I don't know if Square Enix will capitalize off of it. I hope they do, because they really did hit really well with it. But
Yeah, I don't foresee them going. I don't foresee them doing another 16 combat style.
No.
I don't think 16 set the world on fire enough for that. And I there were people like me who were very loud about how we don't like this. This is boring. This isn't an RPG. We want the mechanics. And I think the remake series, the way they continue to expand on it and expound on this combat system, it's so fucking good. Let's get back to the music real quick. Dude, insane music. Not just in how it sounds, because of course it's all fucking phenomenal, but how it changes throughout. So in the Nibelheim flashback sequence, which is, your tutorial of the game, Tifa comes up in a little cowgirl outfit and it plays Tifa's theme, which you and I are quite familiar with. But it has a little Western twang to it, and I'm like, man, this is cute. I like this. The Chocobo racing song. I've identified at least 3 different iterations of that song. One being a hard rock version, one just being a classic. This is what Chocobo racing should sound like, and then there was another one that I forget right now. But the fact that it's all different is awesome. They also do it in ways of intention. So there's a moment in the game, and I forget exactly where it happens, but there's a moment where somebody bursts in the room and goes, Cloud, we need your help outside. And you hear One Winged Angel. Just a hint of it. Sephiroth isn't there, but it's what Cloud is thinking at the time, is Sephiroth is here. So he's running out, and to kind of dive deeper into character, they implement music in ways to kind of give you thoughts that you may not get from the animations, which are beautiful as well.
Yeah, I know there's some moments where I don't want to call it Sephiroth's theme in Nibelheim, but I think it's just called Sephiroth's theme, where it just plays at a different pace.
Yeah.
And it's a more ominous moment, and so it even though it's already an ominous song, it just tones it down. And so if you know what the song originally sounded like, it perks you up, and it really starts working its magic on you.
That happens to me multiple times with Aerith's theme.
Yes.
There were so many times where Aerith's theme would play, and it would be dour. And the moment wouldn't necessarily be dour, but because the music was, it's offsetting. You go, what are we doing? You sit up in your seat and go, what's happening?
Another one I'll touch on just because it's those springs that I was talking about, where you just get info on the world. The thing that I really like doing about those isn't the generic press the button to synchronize this rock so you know what's going on in the world, which, by the way, does do cool things with telling you more about the region you're in, giving you a bit more background information. So that is cool.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it is. But
I'll say this. if there was a sneeze in the last game, that sneeze has a backstory of a 3-hour side quest that you didn't know would exist in this game.
Which is very good.
One of the perks is like if you are familiar with the original game, the lengths that they go to expound on the world is super rewarding. There is so many arcs that you go through in this game specifically. They did it in the last one as well, but in this game specifically, where an important story beat happens, it works, you're crying, you're going, oh my God, this is amazing. And then you turn to the right and there's something new there that wasn't in the original. But like the way they tied into the world, the lore, and just the world building of Final Fantasy VII, you sit here and go, this wasn't in the original, but it could have been.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel alien here. And I really, really appreciate a lot of that.
Because it's usually built off some element in the original game. It's not wholly original, but the way they do it is original.
I think a good example of that from Remake was Neo Midgar. Neo Midgar is one line in the original game. It is mentioned once. And then when you infiltrate the Shinra building, there's like a whole like virtual reality like thing of like explaining what Neo Midgar is, what they want it to be. You walk through like a little museum type thing. That example turned up to 11 in Rebirth with everything. It's awesome.
They really just do cool little things like that, which I'll finish my original thought just real quickly.
Oh, go ahead. I'm
about
sorry.
The music. No, this is how these reviews work.
Yeah.
Chains together. When you find one of these well springs, you hear the song that plays at the very beginning of the original game, before the bombing mission happens. It's those nice soft notes of bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
Gives you that like mysticism of the world of Final Fantasy VII, that when you go into these grottos, which are, even though the tasks themselves are boring, looks beautiful, because the game also, if we didn't touch on this, graphically looks extremely pleasing. You know, it's photorealistic in this somewhat kind of sense, but also not. So it still feels that detachment from reality that allows for some of the crazier things to happen.
I still think there are times where if you look at some of the finer details, some of the texture work could be better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a big game. There's a lot of stuff going on in this game. So I understand if, for the purpose of space on your console, we don't want this game to be 300 gigabytes. Some of these rocks don't look great. Some of these doors don't look great. Sometimes from afar, some of the character models don't look great. Especially with some of the like tertiary NPCs, that you find throughout the world. Sometimes they look a little muddy, but almost not even worth talking about just because of how phenomenal everything else is.
Yeah, I agree. And one more thing, maybe not one more thing, who knows? Something that I had a criticism with the game Octopath Traveler is your party system, they aren't with you. They're just, they all have their own little story going on, and they travel together, but they don't interact with one another. This game does like the opposite of that. Not only because they interact with one another, as we previously stated, but when you're in combat, the other party members are there. When you're traveling in the open world, your other party members are there. And going back to the combat, they're actually fighting in that combat. Aerith is launching magic attacks, Barrett's shooting things. It doesn't do anything, but it does create that image of, it's not just so much of a video game that you're just getting blinders on.
It's a visual flair for the purpose of a visual flair.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not really doing any real damage.
No.
If anything, it's like 3 damage or 5
I don't even think they're doing that.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah, but it's nice to have them there, and it's just a nice little splash of flavor.
Yeah,
that not many multiplayer games do like this.
Seeing them run around in the background, seeing them look like they're in the battle, does so much for the immersion of the party. You feel like the party is a unit.
Yeah.
And it's sort of in the original game, like you had your 3. And you would kind of stick with your 3. For me, it was Tifa and Barrett. I'd have Tifa and Barrett for the entire FF7 journey from beginning to end. I did that still a lot in Rebirth. It was mostly Tifa and Barrett, but I did swap around. I did play around with different party builds and mechanics and so forth. And sometimes the game makes you. But I never had a bad time with any of my combinations, which I think is so impressive. It was great playing Yuffie. It was fun playing Red 13, playing Aerith. the ways that they expand on old characters and the ways that they introduce new ones. Like the idea that in the next game we're gonna get 2 more is, what the hell? Yeah, at least 2 more. And I would like to open I would like to finish off with opening a final conversation with that in how should players approach this game, because it's a little complicated. This game is being advertised as if you could pick this game up as if it was your first one. Don't do that. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. At least play Remake first. At the very least, play Remake first. I would recommend playing the whole series. Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core, Remake, Rebirth. Watch the Advent Children movie. All of that I think is fun. All of that I think is good. I've got criticisms of Crisis Core. I don't think it's an awesome game. Advent Children as a movie is not very good either. But the original game really is still awesome. But if it's too old for you, if that's not how you want to be introduced to the world, hey, I wasn't. Remake was my first, I still think Remake is a viable way to have your first experience with these games.
And if you're not interested in touching the 7 game, the original game at all, watch a video on YouTube explaining the plot. Like a detailed one. There's tons of detailed ones out there that can supplement that.
Yeah, I would do that or play Remake first and then get to that ending and be like, what the hell's going on? And then watch a plot recap and understand what happens in the original game. Because I also think there are choices made in this game that actively hurt the player's relationship with the characters. Mm-hmm. Specifically Cloud. The way Cloud acts in the last third of this game, I would understand if you finished this game and you were like, I don't fuck with Cloud. I would understand why. Just know that there's a reason for that, and we're just not to that part of the story yet.
You're wrong, in other words. But you don't know you're wrong, so it's okay.
But it's valid. Like like there are times where I go, Cloud, what the fuck, bro? But I know more than a first-time player. And if you are a first-time player, just stick along with it. Don't count him out yet. There's reasons for everything. There are reasons for everything in this game. And then let's have a brief conversation about things that are new to the story of Final Fantasy VII. You can speak on this a little bit as well. And I'm putting this at the end for the sake of, hey, if you want to go in blind, spoilers, hey, this is your moment to jump out now. We're not going to go deep into spoilers, but we're going to mention characters that, have new storylines, we'll say, or have new purpose in this game and so forth. So now is your time to jump out for that. If you want to stick around, please. Thank you. We're going to talk for probably another, 15 minutes maybe, and then dip out. I loved... So the last game left us with the cliffhanger of, Zack survives, right? Let's talk about Zack Fair, the big elephant in the room that is Zack and what's going on with that. I loved his implementation in Rebirth. Even in the ending, when they use him in the ending, I loved that. All of the Zack stuff I thought was awesome. It was great to see this corny-ass, always positive hero guy be introduced into this world that is so negative. And sort of how he interacts in this world. Because, let's be honest, Zack from Crisis Core fits awkwardly into the world of Final Fantasy VII.
Which, going into this game, I was expecting that.
Yeah.
It's
still there.
But in a good way, I would say overall.
I think in a more acceptable way.
Well, there's a scene in one of the times he's showing up where there's Marlene is there, right? And his interaction with her, and she's all dour. And
I think there's 2 or 3 scenes of this, but I know which one you're talking about.
The first one,
yeah.
Cloud in the first game, they kind of had a weird relationship, and that's understandable because of who Cloud is.
Yeah.
It wasn't very inviting for a little girl like Marlene, but Zack has one interaction with her, and she instantly likes the guy.
Yeah.
And you see why? Because he just interjects that hero element. He's
Yeah.
the hero, the traditional hero in this world that doesn't usually have one. I mean, you have to remember one of the
He's very much the, hey, look up, think about this.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna get through this.
I'm going to go do the thing that you want me to do because I'm good and helping you out.
Yeah.
But it feels sincere. And
It really does.
It does, yeah. It really makes you endeared to that character.
And
if
I'll
you
be
otherwise
honest,
weren't.
man, I liked the voice acting in this one.
See, that's the weird thing. Because
This is Zach to me now.
it is. In seeing Advent Children
Yeah.
and the original Crisis Core, I had liked that voice actor leagues better when I was playing through Crisis Core. And I was like, this guy just doesn't sound all that great for the role. No offense to him. But now I think that's just Crisis Core rather than the voice actor himself. Because in this one, those
Well,
issues
even in
just weren't
Crisis
there.
Core, like Cloud and Aerith sucked, and those are the same voice actors that we have here who are putting on a clinic. You know,
yeah.
like they're doing great work. You know, so I think part of that was Crisis Core, and then his implementation into Remake is so small that it's like there's no depth there.
Yeah.
And he's delivering these iconic lines in ways that aren't what we know them to be. But here in Rebirth, I like him. Is he the best? No, but like he is what Zach needs to be.
And this is before we even get a lot of him. You know,
Yeah.
there's going to be more, I'm assuming.
Well, you're gonna have to
I'll
play
have
the
to
game and
find
find
out,
out, Connor. But I will say that there are moments in here where they pay off on Zach in ways that I dreamed about, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening.
And I'm assuming that's compounded by the fact that you have now played Crisis Core, because we played that a little while ago.
Oh sure, yeah.
That it made him better.
Yeah.
Because if you know where
Yeah,
he came from.
yeah. You know, I know who Zach is. I enjoy. I that was the thing about Crisis Core is I always liked Zach.
Yeah, he was fun. It just was.
Yeah.
It was the voice acting and the writing that.
The writing is awful, but yeah, the character of Zach, I like Zach's character. You know, I think it's fun to have that guy in this story, which is so sad.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice to have a guy who's like always looking up. You know, because so many of these characters and so much of this world is oppressive.
Yeah.
You know, and for a guy to just always be looking up is nice, you know? So yeah, I think Zach in this game is fantastic. He's just sprinkled throughout it. It's not his story. It's Cloud's story. But, you know, they're throwing little seeds in there every once in a while. Every so often you get a little cutaway, and it's like, hey, this is what Zach's doing right now, you know? It's not as intense as I thought it was going to be.
No, from what I've seen in my own playthrough, and I know it's going to be kind of going throughout the rest of the game.
Well, what you have seen is pretty much we're going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he's involved in the ending, you know, and that's about it. I legitimately thought he was going to be half this game.
Yeah.
And he's not. He's not even a quarter, like he is a very small percentage of this game. You could ignore him, which I think is to the benefit of players who this is their first time through Final Fantasy VII. Is like, yeah, we cut to this Zach guy. I don't know what the deal is with him, but it's kind of cool or whatever. And they kind of explain why the whole Zach thing at the end of Remake was important. They kind of explain that, but they don't go all the way with it. And much like they don't go all the way with a couple of other things that happen narratively in just the original plot of the game, which is why I still think like, hey, go play the original. Like it's still got a lot of value. It's still really fun and charming. It is old, and you do have to get over that, but like it is worth it. But if this is how you want to experience Final Fantasy VII, I think that's perfectly fine. I just urge you, don't play this one first. Play Remake first. At the very least, play Remake first.
For those of you that may have seen the notice that you can play Alan Wake 2 without playing Alan Wake 1, that's true. Not here.
Not here.
Not at all.
No. Yeah. You can play Alan Wake 2 without playing Alan Wake 1. Playing Alan Wake 1 helps.
Makes it better.
It does make it better, you know, because I went and watched a plot recap and I went, oh, that put new meaning on everything. But it's not necessary, you know. Here, I think it's I don't understand. I understand for marketing reasons they want the game to sell. It's a big game. They want everybody who can to buy it, and they don't want people to be like, oh, I got to play the first one first, and then they never get to it. I think just play the first one first, you know.
Yeah.
Connor, is there anything else that we have failed to mention that you wanted to talk about?
Not without spoiling.
I agree. Oh, again, I'll just say, man, character moments in this game are awesome. You know, and I criticize some of like sometimes the animations look a little cheap when you're running through the world or something. But when it's important for that budget to go into specific scenes, they implement it. And for fans of the original game, moments that you hope hit, yeah, they fucking hit all of them, every single one of them. And so yeah, I'm supremely happy with this game. I've got a couple of problems with it, but when I want to play Final Fantasy VII Remake series as of right now, I'm not going to reach for Remake. I'm going to reach for this game because I think this game is better than Remake as a whole. I think Remake is a little tighter of an experience. Rebirth can get a little messy, especially narratively. It's a little messy, but you forgive it because of how high the highs are and how many highs there are. It's constant. There were so many times Connor, like, you know, me and Connor are roommates, so there were so many times where he was like, man, I heard you, were you like sneezing? And I was like, no, I was fucking like cheering. I was like, yeah, it's happening. Let's go. Like this game really is special. It's really phenomenal. And I love it. It's just these couple of little like annoying little issues that I just wish weren't there.
And if you know anything about Tavin from these videos, he can be a little bitchy sometimes. So take that with a grain of salt. He can be a whiny little bitch sometimes. And he give me the stink eye. Are you going to end it? You're going to end it?
No, I don't have a button for that. I have to go over here. But we are going to wrap it up because we have talked for another 50 minutes about Final Fantasy VII, Connor. We keep doing this to ourselves.
No problem.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and listening. This has been a TwoPennyGames review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. If you're here from the Gamescast, thank you for sticking around and listening to us rant about how much we love this game. Let us know down in the comments how you felt about the game. And keep an eye out. Make sure you like and subscribe and all of that so that you know when this spoiler cast drops, because we will be going deep and giving theories about where part 3 is going to go, how we feel about the ending, how we felt about key moments of this game. I'll tell you what, to me, the climax of the game is not where the devs want the climax to be. It's about 5 hours earlier, you know? So, just, you know, that's where I loved the game the most, is 5 hours before the ending happened. But let me know how you felt down in the comments down below. Until next time, have a great time. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye.